Hello, I'm going to talk about the difference between be kind and be good-mannered. I brought the subject up in a previous video, the one about the hammer thrower incident during the playing of the American national anthem. But I was just riffing at the time, and I didn't really have time to think the whole thing through in detail. So I'm going to tell you my thoughts on that, because this morning I suddenly had a blinding thought about what the difference is between being kind and being well-mannered. And it's this: you can be kind to an animal. You can't be well-mannered to an animal, because being well-mannered implies equality. That is a very important difference. Okay, so let's get back to this hammer throwing thing. I brought up the subject of the difference between good manners and being kind. And I hadn't, because the subject just came up while I was chatting, I didn't really think through it that carefully. But I'm going to do that now because I think it's very important. So the words be kind have come up a lot in Hollywood recently, especially from Ellen DeGeneres, who apparently is not as generous as a name implies, and tends to be as nasty as it's possible to be to her subordinates. But she kept on saying be kind in her public persona. So it strikes me as an interesting insight into the Hollywood mind that they're using those words, be kind, rather than be good-mannered. And perhaps, well, obviously, even in the mind of the sort of person who leans to the left, because a lot of lefties are using this as well. Now, I used to lean to the left myself, and I was always a fairly well-mannered person, I have to say. But something has happened to the left recently, which, I can't even begin to explain. But let's stick to the Hollywood mantra. I remember when I first heard it said, this be kind thing, it made me feel uncomfortable, and I didn't know why, because it's not that I don't believe in being kind, but there was something wrong about it, and I couldn't pin it down until I started comparing it with good manners. In that video about the rude hammer thrower at the Olympic trials, then I realised being kind is a really good example of what the Hollywood mind is all about. That is narcissism and the way things look on the surface rather than what they actually are. Let's just think. Being kind is when you yourself are in a good position. I might say a superior position, a rich position, a powerful position, an advantageous position. And you see someone who's not in such a good place, and although they may not be as nice or as deferential or as well-groomed and all the rest of it as you might like, you feel that it would show you're a good person if you're kind to them. So, if you're being kind to someone in that situation, you're actually coming from what the French call de haut en bas. It means from on high to the lowly. And you're controlling yourself so you don't react in an instinctive way, because you're a better person than that, and better than the person to whom you are showing such saintly condescension, and you're certainly better than the other people around you who aren't showing such kindness, or even better for your ego, perhaps the people around you aren't in your elevated position to be able to show such kindness. That reminds me of something. If I can find it, I'll play it here.
But am I saying that I'm better than you? Yeah, I'm better than you, okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.
So, when you're kind to someone and you know you're being kind, you are, well, you're giving yourself a pat on the back, aren't you? You're saying to yourself, well done, you. You're a really good person. You're doing a great thing here by being kind to this awful person, to this dirty person, to this smelly person, to this short-tempered person, to this harassed person. But whatever sort of a person it may be, this inferior person. Now, when you're good-mannered, that's something else altogether. You know, being kind, you are what you are, and then you control yourself so you're not reacting as most might expect. But being good-mannered, that's already the benchmark. You're expected to be at that benchmark. The only recognition in that game would be getting marked down when you fall below the benchmark. Otherwise, you're just doing what should be expected of any civilized human being. This is just where you are. You aren't coming down to anyone, you're simply maintaining a position which has already been set, and worse than that, not by yourself. You are, in other words, submitting yourself to the precedent of others, of society, of history, and of practice. When you're good-mannered, there is no cause to congratulate yourself because you're doing what is supposed to be done, what is expected for a particular type of person in a particular type of station. However, when you're being kind, you're doing something above and beyond. You're picking up the bedraggled kitten from the gutter. You're handing a tramp your sandwich. And this is so typically Hollywood and so typical of a lot of people on the left. Not all, and especially not in the past. As I said, something's happened to the left recently, but there's a time when British socialists were academic, intellectual, polite. There's a chap called Michael Foot. You can look him up on Wikipedia. They were also often quite foolish. Michael Foot, look him up on Wikipedia, but that's another matter. But back to Hollywood and the modern left. They don't set benchmarks for themselves. There is no, I'm going to be good-mannered because this is the benchmark. And if I fall below it, I should be criticised, or worse. I would have to reflect upon my own worth as a human being and a member of society, knowing that if I just stick to the rules, however much of an effort it takes to do so, no one's going to notice. No one's going to notice anything special in my heroic behaviour, any more than they might notice the air we're both breathing. There's no cause for any congratulation, no back-patting, no admiration for my generosity of spirit. Whereas if I act like a pig most of the time, but occasionally I'm being kind, I'm doing something far more worthy than just sticking to good manners. I'm lowering myself, or I'm going out of my way to be amazing. I can really tell myself I've done something good there. It's the difference between acting well because of a feeling that all humanity has to come to a certain standard, or acting well in order to feed your own narcissism. And that's why I am making this difference between being kind and having good manners. You can be kind to an animal, to a fellow human that you regard as a fellow human, because you have self-respect and have respect for that other person as a fellow human. That's good manners. It's different altogether. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbow, with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share, share, share.